I will remain in detention for life until impartial judge takes over my case. This is coming from Nnamdi Kanu. I'm reading from Daily Post. He went further to say that Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, on Saturday said he is prepared to remain in detention all his life until a proper and impartial judge handles his matter. He went further to say that Kanu alleged a serious executive and judicial fraud being perpetrated against him since 2021 when he was extraordinary rendition. The IPOB leader claimed that his matter is deliberately being shielded from judges and justices who can deliver impartial judgments that may lead to the federal government losing in courts. At this point, I think it is better that the government should allow the man Nnamdi Kanu go, because we saw the judgment that came from Court of Appeal the other time, saying that he was extraordinary rendition, as such that federal government have lost every right to prosecute him and should be released unconditionally. Federal government, we understand, went for a stay of execution of that judgment, and Nnamdi Kanu himself recently have even challenged every legal luminary in Nigeria, even law students, anyone that have the knowledge or any provision of the constitution, whether locally or internationally, that empowers federal government to apply for stay of execution of such case should come forward, and there is a price for that, 1 million naira, of course. And up to now, no lawyer, no whether serving a lawyer that is serving or law student have been able to come forward with such constitutional provision, and that challenge is still out there. And you look at equally the position of UN, a situation where they charge Nigerian government to release the man Nnamdi Kanu. Let me quickly read that out. I'm reading from the Vanguard. He's saying, UN working group tells Nigeria to unconditionally release, compensate Nnamdi Kanu. He went further to say, the United Nations UN Human Rights Council Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has indicted both Nigeria and Kenya governments for the arrest and extraordinary rendition, torture, and continued detention of leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, without due process. Let me quickly say that the Nigerian government have not heeded to this advice. Otherwise, by now, I think some persons would have been in detention or under prosecution for that extraordinary rendition of the man Nnamdi Kanu. Because we understand that if you want someone to be tried in your country, if you claim the person is a fugitive, there are due process you can follow to extradite such person, and you cannot do that without undergoing a prejudicial process in the country where the person needs to be extradited. This time around, I think it's in Kenya. So before Nnamdi Kanu was brought to Nigeria, there needed to be a judicial process in Kenya to determine whether he should come to Nigeria or not. But beyond this, we have seen different intervention from different angles, calling on the government to release the man Nnamdi Kanu. The last came from Afenifere under the leadership of the man Adebanjo, who unfortunately gave us the ghost recently. And I think the right thing for the government to do is to heed such advice and allow the man Nnamdi Kanu go. We've always seen in the past where senators from the southeastern part of the country, under the leadership of Senator Ina Baribe, met with the Attorney General of the Federation, of course, who stand for the federal government, talking about the same release of Nnamdi Kanu. Only recently, Senator Ina Baribe came out to advise the President, Senator Ahmed Bola Tinubu, to take the advice of the Attorney General of the Federation. So it implies that while they had that discussion, that the Attorney General of the Federation is on the view that the man Nnamdi Kanu should be released. Now, looking at the background of his detention, and we understand that the other day he went vocal, Nnamdi Kanu himself, talking about Nigerian government having poor knowledge of the law, talking about his right to agitate. Yes, we understand that it is a UN charter that talks about self-determination, that empowers Nnamdi Kanu and any other person that agitates for self-determination. Of course, that charter has been ratified in Nigeria, so to that extent, it's a law in Nigerian legal jurisprudence. So that is why Nnamdi Kanu himself went vocal that day to say that yes, I have right to agitate. And I don't think any government or any judge, any constitutional provision criminalize agitation. The only area or the only thing that is criminalized is wanton destruction of life and property. And the constitution has made it very clear that one is innocent until proven otherwise by a court of competent jurisdiction. So it makes sense that hence Court of Appeal have ruled that Nnamdi Kanu was extraordinary rendition for Kenya to Nigeria, and as such, it should be released unconditionally. It makes sense that the federal government ought to allow him enjoy the judgment of that court, even if they want to pursue appeal, just they are doing, but they ought to allow him enjoy that judgment. Though the government have claimed that they secured a state of execution, and Nnamdi Kanu himself is challenging them that the state of execution you procured is not backed by any legal proceeding, any precedents, whether locally or internationally. It was even on that basis he challenged any lawyer, whether serving or a law student, to come forward with any constitutional position, whether locally or internationally, that empowers federal government to seek and get state of execution with respect to that judgment that already said he was extraordinary rendition from Kenya to Nigeria. But the point we are looking at here is there are a whole lot of argument in this regard. All the stakeholders from the eastern part of the country already alluded to the fact that the release of Nnamdi Kanu is a panacea for peace in that region. The only person I now see as a lone voice happens to be the governor of Anambra State, talking about Chuma Soludo, who recently said that the release of Nnamdi Kanu may not end insecurity in the eastern part of the country. But looking at agitation itself, I think if the government wants agitation to, of course, die down, they should do the needful. And the needful is that address the root cause of agitation. When it started after the Civil War, there was the issue of 3R, talking about reconstruction, reconciliation, and integration. Of course, that came from Gowon himself. But surprisingly, the government, federal government, did not give attention to it. And instead, we continue seeing serious marginalization against the Igbo race. Things are skewed against them, even under the current democracy, things are skewed against them. So when you have a situation like that, the consequence is what we are seeing, a situation where people will be agitating to secede from the country. And more so, as it's a right under the constitution for someone to say, I am no longer interested in this ethical Nigeria. But come to think of it, God in his wisdom by providence created Nigerians, different people. That is why he gave the Hausas their own language, the Yoruba their own language, the Igbo their own language, everybody with their own culture and others. That notwithstanding, if there is need for people to come together under the same platform called Nigeria, it must be through unanimous agreement. Not what we have currently, a situation where the grand norm, the constitution that binds everybody together, is forced on Nigerians by the military. But we understand that at no point did Nigerians come together to say they want to write that constitution. And the greater fraud of that constitution is that it goes to the preamble to say, we the people of Nigeria came together. So one begin to ask, one begin to wonder, at what point did Nigerians gather together to write that constitution? That's why people have been yearning for people's oriented constitution. If the government must address all the things that make people feel disenchanted, feel dissatisfied with the Nigerian process, and see whether they could make people to rekindle their confidence and hope in Nigeria. Any other thing you do without following this route, for me, I think is a cosmetic approach. Even the arrest, harassment, intimidation, prosecution of the man Nnamdi Kanu, of maybe Samanepa, all these are cosmetic because it is not addressing the root cause. It's cosmetic because it's not even deterring people from rising to say we want our own sovereign state. Otherwise, after the arrest of Nnamdi Kanu, someone like Samanepa needed not to rise up. Even after the arrest and detention of Samanepa, we are seeing Ngozi Oraboze rising to take his space. And somebody like Professor Woloshenka, the Nobel laureate, made it very clear, of course, repeatedly, that Biafra is an ideology that it cannot defeat it through the power of gun. It can only be addressed through ideological point of view. And that ideological point of view have to do with a roundtable conversation. Under the presidency of Goodluck Jonathan, we had a confab. Unfortunately, his government did not stay too long after the confab to follow through, or to follow through and perhaps to bring that confab into the constitution, because that confab afforded Nigerians the opportunity of coming together from all walks of life, from every background, every cultural extraction, to be on the same platform and chart the way forward and discuss how they want Nigeria to be governed and others. But the point is, even the current government is not interested, or yes, is not interested in confab reports or results, I think it is still welcomed for them to initiate another process. We call it constitutional review, we call it national discourse, but the point is, the result that will come out of it must address the constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that is lopsided, that is not people's oriented, that was forced on Nigerians. And until you do that, Nigerians cannot see themselves as Nigeria, because however I look at it, Nigerians are already divided in their minds. There's nothing like unity in Nigeria. It's only that the federal government, through their own instrumentality of force, coercive power, is using it to coerce and force everybody into this entity called Nigeria. But in the mind of Nigerians, to be quite honest, Nigerians have since exited Nigeria. Some Nigerians have since exited Nigeria in their mind. And to the Britain, or rather British government, that amalgamated Nigeria without the consent of the people. And of course, we understand that even Britain itself exited European Union the other time. And even when they needed to exit European Union, though there were yes, argument for and against, we understand that even a Sunday who rose the other time took a letter to the office of the Prime Minister of United Kingdom. We understand that back here in Nigeria, the embassy, UK's embassy in Nigeria here, advised him to join her with other Nigerians to move Nigeria forward. But the question is, when Britain needed to exit European Union, did anybody advise them to jettison the idea and join her with other European Union member countries to move European Union forward instead of exiting European Union? So the issue is, as long as self-determination is a right, and it is a UN charter that has been ratified in Nigeria, I think to that extent it is a law in Nigeria, and anyone coming through that route to say I want self-determination have not committed any crime, whether locally or internationally. So that is where we are looking at it. But the point is, at this point, if the North before now, considering the statement that came from Olusegun Obasanjo, called for Araba, meaning secession, it goes to show that people who are dissatisfied with the Nigerian system is not just Biafrans. It goes to show that this is not the first time people will be rising to say, I don't want Nigeria, I want my own sovereign state. So it goes to show that Nigeria issue needs a roundtable conversation to be resolved. Otherwise, all we are seeing is cosmetic. You raise Ebubago, you raise maybe civilian GTF, you raise Operation Python Dance. All those things are coercive power anyway, but it is cosmetic because you are not addressing the root cause. The root cause has to be with issues that gave rise to the agitation in the first place. You understand that the ethno-religious imbalance that gave rise to the civil war up to today have not been addressed. Of course, if you look at the way things are skewed against the Igbos currently in the country, you will agree with me that they are justified to agitate for self-determination. Under Muhammadu Buhari, we have about 17 positions when it comes to security positions in Nigeria, talking about the Office of the National Security Advisor to Office of the IG of Police, Office of the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, Chief of Air Staff, Director of DSS, Director of Intelligence, National Intelligence Agency. We are talking about 17 positions. Under Muhammadu Buhari, none of them went to the southeastern part of the country. Of course, I understand that about 14 or 13 was domiciled in the north. About only 3 or so or 4 is what the Buhari gave to the southern part of the country. But currently, I understand that out of all the 7 chiefs, 1 is given to the Igbos. I think that has to do with the chief of naval staff, though it is not yet Uhuru. It's not. That is, for me, is grossly inadequate, and I think the government can do more or do better. For now, I must say very thank you, and we hope and wish that the government will hearken to the voice of reason to initiate a roundtable conversation to resolve this impasse of people agitating to exit Nigeria. I must say very thank you for your time. This is Nnamdi Kanu Vows. Thank you very much.